My boyfriend said my suit was embarrassing for his company party. Later that night, he left with another woman and spent the next week convincing everyone I was the problem. My name is Marin Whitlock. I'm 27 years old, and until a few months ago, I honestly believed love was supposed to feel safer than this. I work as a warehouse operations supervisor for a logistics company. It's not glamorous work. Nobody hears warehouse supervisor and imagines rooftop bars, startup investors, or champagne being poured into skinny glasses while people talk about market growth like they're discussing religion. Most days, I wear steel toe boots and spend 10 hours making sure trucks leave on time, inventory doesn't disappear, and 12 exhausted people get home safely. I know every aisle in that building. I know which forklift sounds wrong before the warning light comes on. I know how to calm down angry drivers and how to keep a team moving when everyone's tired and one mistake could cost thousands. I make decent money, enough to support myself, enough to be proud of the life I built. But Julian lived in a different world. He worked in marketing for a tech startup that had recently exploded in popularity. His company was full of people who somehow looked expensive even when they were pretending to be casual. Everyone wore neutral colors and sneakers that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. They talked about branding and networking and personal image, like those things mattered more than character. When Julian and I first started dating, he used to joke about it. He would squeeze my hand under the table during work dinners and whisper, "Half these people wouldn't survive one day doing your job." Back then, it felt like he respected me. Then, little things started changing. Not all at once. That's the dangerous part. People think relationships collapse through giant betrayals. Most of the time, they erode quietly. One small comment at a time until you suddenly realize your confidence has been bleeding out for months. Julian started correcting things. My clothes, my hair, the way I spoke around his coworkers. "You're wearing those boots out? That jacket's fine, but maybe not for dinner with my team. You'd look really good if you dressed more intentionally." At first, I ignored it because love makes excuses for people before it protects itself. I told myself he was trying to help. I bought nicer shoes. I changed my makeup a little. I stopped wearing my old work hoodie when we went out together, even though it was the most comfortable thing I owned. The worst part is that I didn't even realize I was shrinking yet. Then came the company party. His startup had just secured a massive funding round, and the CEO was throwing a formal celebration downtown. Partners were invited. Julian talked about the event for weeks like it was the most important night of his career. I wanted to support him. More than that, I wanted him to feel proud introducing me. So I bought a suit. A real one. Not something cheap grabbed off a rack because I panicked. I researched fabrics, tailoring, cuts. I watched videos late at night, trying to understand why certain clothes made people look confident while others made them disappear. I ended up choosing a charcoal gray wool suit with clean lines and subtle tailoring. Elegant without trying too hard. Sharp without being flashy. It cost me over $1,200. Basically a month of take-home pay after bills. I remember standing in front of the mirror after the final fitting and almost crying, because for the first time in a long while, I felt beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with sex appeal. I just looked capable, grounded, like a woman who belonged wherever she walked into. I wanted Julian to see me that way too. The night of the party, I got ready early. I took my time with my makeup, curled my hair carefully, checked the mirror more times than I want to admit. Julian was fastening his cufflinks when I walked into the bedroom. He looked up, then he laughed. A real laugh. Not nervous, not playful. Dismissive. "You're really wearing that to my company party?" Everything inside me paused. "What's wrong with it?" He tilted his head slightly. "It's just very corporate, like bank interview corporate. This is a tech event. People are going to be stylish." "I thought you said it was formal." "It is, but formal doesn't have to look stiff." Stiff. The word landed strangely hard. I looked down at the suit I had spent weeks obsessing over. "It's tailored." "Yeah, but tailored doesn't automatically mean fashionable." Then he sighed like I was making things difficult. "I just don't want people thinking my girlfriend doesn't know how to dress." I still remember the feeling that moved through my chest when he said that. Not anger at first. Embarrassment. Humiliation has a physical feeling to it. Your stomach drops. Your skin gets hot. You suddenly become aware of your own body in the room, like you're taking up space incorrectly. I stood there staring at him while he adjusted his watch in the mirror, like this conversation was completely reasonable. And something inside me finally got tired. Tired of trying. Tired of adjusting. Tired of earning approval inside a relationship that was supposed to be home. "You're right," I said. Relief crossed his face immediately. Thank you, I knew you'd understand. He went back to fixing his hair while I walked to the closet. I hung the suit back up carefully. Then I changed into jeans, sneakers, and a plain black t-shirt. When I grabbed my keys, Julian frowned. What are you doing? I'm going to watch the game. His expression tightened instantly. The party starts in an hour. I know. Marin. I looked at him for a second before answering. You just made it very clear you're embarrassed by me, so I'm solving the problem. That's not what I said. I laughed quietly, but there wasn't anything funny in it anymore. You laughed at me in a suit I spent a month's salary on. Then you told me you didn't want people judging how your girlfriend dresses. I shrugged slightly. I understood perfectly. You're overreacting. Maybe, I admitted, but I'm still leaving. I drove to the sports bar Tara and I used to go to before I got so consumed trying to fit into Julian's world that I forgot I had one of my own. She took one look at my face and pushed a basket of fries toward me. What happened? When I told her, she stared at me for a long moment. He laughed? I nodded. At the suit? Another nod. Tara swore under her breath and handed me a beer. You know what's sad, she said. You probably looked incredible. I didn't answer because suddenly I thought I might cry if I opened my mouth. Around 10 o'clock, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Text from Julian. Where are you? People keep asking about you. My CEO wanted to meet you. This is humiliating. Call me back. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before turning the phone face down on the table. For the first time in months, I let him sit with the discomfort instead of rushing to fix it for him. I stayed at Tara's apartment that night. The next morning, I listened to Julian's voicemail while standing barefoot in her kitchen. Marin, I seriously cannot believe you did this to me. Do you know how embarrassing that was? People kept asking where you were. My CEO specifically wanted to meet you. You ruined an important night because your ego got bruised over fashion advice. Fashion advice. That phrase stayed with me because it sounded so harmless compared to how I actually felt standing in that bedroom. That's the thing about emotional manipulation. People reduce your pain into smaller words so they don't have to feel guilty for causing it. I drove home later that afternoon hoping maybe things would calm down once we actually talked. Instead, Julian was waiting in the living room like he had prepared a defense speech overnight. The second I walked in, he started, Do you have any idea what you did to me last night? I stared at him for a moment. You mean leaving a party after my boyfriend laughed at me before we even walked out the door? I was trying to help you. That didn't feel like help. You're twisting this into something bigger than it was. I felt my chest tightening again. No, Julian, I think you just don't want to admit you humiliated me. His jaw tightened immediately. I gave you advice. You laughed in my face. Because the suit was stiff. You looked at me like you were embarrassed to stand beside me. That's not true. But he wouldn't even fully meet my eyes when he said it. We argued for nearly an hour. Every time I tried explaining why it hurt, he reframed it into me being emotional, sensitive, dramatic. Then finally, he muttered something that told me exactly where his priorities were. My coworkers keep asking what happened. There it was. Not us. Not my feelings. The audience. What am I supposed to tell them? He asked. The truth. He scoffed. That my girlfriend had a meltdown over constructive criticism? I looked at him and suddenly realized something painful. Julian cared more about protecting the image of himself than understanding what he had actually done to me. And once you notice that in someone, it becomes impossible to unsee. The next few days felt awful. Not explosive. Worse. Passive aggression. Coldness. Little comments designed to wear me down slowly. Julian criticized everything. My clothes. My communication style. Even my job. One morning, he glanced at my work bag and casually said, Most people our age are trying to level up professionally. I remember staring at him across the kitchen thinking, You used to admire how hard I worked. Then his friends started messaging me. Apparently, he had already told everyone his version of events. I was immature. I abandoned him. I embarrassed him publicly. Every message sounded weirdly similar, like they had all been handed the same script. I screenshotted all of them without replying. Instinct more than strategy. Something inside me already knew there was a deeper truth hiding underneath this fight. 4 days later, Julian came home calmer than before. Too calm. Like someone who had spent several days convincing himself he was the victim. I think we need space, he said. I stared at him. You want me to leave? I need room to think. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. He insults me, humiliates me, then asks me to leave the apartment we both pay for because my reaction became inconvenient for him. But I was too exhausted to fight anymore. So I packed a bag and went back to Tara's place. That night, lying awake in her guest room, memories kept replaying in my head. Julian correcting how I pronounced wine names in front of coworkers. Julian joking that I had warehouse energy. Julian slowly making me feel like I was always slightly wrong somehow. The party wasn't the beginning of the problem. It was just the first moment I stopped excusing it. A week later, one of Julian's coworkers messaged me on LinkedIn. Her name was Sophie. We had met twice before at work events. Quiet woman, observant. Her message said, "I know this is weird, but I think there's something you deserve to know." My stomach dropped immediately. We met at a coffee shop after work. Sophie looked uncomfortable the second I sat down. "I almost didn't tell you," she admitted, "but the way he's been talking about you at work doesn't sit right with me." My chest tightened. "What happened?" She hesitated before answering. "At the party, Julian spent most of the night with someone from product development." "A woman?" She nodded. "Her name's Vanessa." The name meant nothing to me then. "Not yet," Sophie explained. "They spent almost the entire night together, sitting together during speeches, dancing together afterward, touching each other constantly. Then finally, she said the thing that made my stomach turn cold. They left together." I just stared at her. "Julian told me he went home alone. Julian spent 8 days making me feel guilty for abandoning him. And meanwhile, another woman drove him home after the event he claimed I ruined." "How long?" I asked quietly. Sophie looked away before answering. "People at work have noticed them getting close for months." Months. Suddenly, every confusing moment from the last year started rearranging itself inside my head. The criticism, the emotional distance, the weird hostility whenever I tried getting closer to him emotionally. It all made horrible sense now. Sometimes people emotionally leave relationships long before they physically end them. And once that happens, your love starts irritating them instead of comforting them. I texted Julian that night asking to meet. We chose a coffee shop halfway between my warehouse and his office. He arrived looking polished and composed, while I felt like I hadn't slept properly in days. The second he sat down, he gave me this tight little smile. "So, are we finally ready to have an adult conversation?" There it was again. That subtle implication that my pain automatically made me immature. I looked at him across the table. "How did you get home after the party?" His expression shifted almost instantly. "I took an Uber." He answered too quickly, too smoothly. The lie hit me almost immediately. "I heard you left with someone." His jaw tightened slightly. "Who told you that?" "That's not important." "It is if people are spreading rumors." I watched him carefully. Not his words, his face. People tell the truth with their expressions long before they do with language. "You left with Vanessa." For 1 second, actual panic crossed his face. Then it disappeared. "She offered me a ride because my phone died." There it was. The story change. Uber suddenly becoming Vanessa. And weirdly, that was the moment confusion finally left my body. The hurt was still there, but at least I finally understood what was happening. "You just said you took an Uber." He leaned back immediately, defensive now, because I knew where this conversation was going. "No," I replied. "You lied because the truth made you nervous." "My phone died." "You carry a portable charger everywhere." Silence. Then irritation flooded his face. "You abandoned me at the biggest night of my career, and now you're interrogating me over a ride home? Coworkers don't spend entire parties attached to each other. So now you're spying on me?" I almost laughed. That tactic always amazed me. When people can't defend the behavior, they attack the reaction. I looked at him for a long moment. "Were you involved with her before we broke up?" "No." Too fast again. No sadness. No shock. Just defense. And suddenly I understood something terrifying. Julian wasn't trying to save the relationship anymore. He was trying to save his image inside the relationship. There's a difference. A huge one. He didn't sound hurt anymore. He sounded cornered. "I don't believe you anymore," I said quietly. Something hardened in his face after that. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" I took a breath. "I think you emotionally left this relationship a long time ago," I admitted. "And I think the suit fight gave you an excuse to make me the villain before everyone found out." That hit him harder than I expected. Not because he looked guilty, because he looked exposed. The argument got uglier after that. Julian started listing every way I embarrassed him socially. How awkward I supposedly looked around his coworkers. How he constantly felt like he had to manage the room around me. Every sentence hurt in this slow, exhausting way because I realized he had been thinking these things for a long time. Then finally, I asked the question that cracked the entire conversation open. "And Vanessa?" I asked. "Did she make you feel less embarrassed?" He looked away immediately. That silence told me more than words ever could. A few minutes later, I ended it. Not dramatically. I just looked at him and realized I no longer felt emotionally safe with him. I had spent so long trying not to embarrass him that I forgot love was never supposed to feel like an interview. And I was exhausted from performing for someone who had already moved on from me long before the breakup. That night, I went back to the apartment to get the rest of my things. Tara came with me. Julian wasn't home. The apartment looked exactly the same, which somehow made everything worse. 3 years together reduced to boxes and divided kitchen supplies. I packed slowly. Books, work clothes, kitchen tools. The ugly green mug Tara gave me, that Julian always complained didn't match the apartment aesthetic. Then I saw the suit hanging in the closet. For a second, I just stood there staring at it. That suit had become the symbol of everything. The effort, the humiliation. The moment I finally stopped shrinking, Tara watched me carefully while I folded it into the garment bag. "You know what I think?" she said. "I think you look too confident in it." I frowned slightly. "What?" "He wanted you smaller," she replied. "People who are halfway out the door emotionally usually start criticizing the person they're leaving." The worst part was that deep down I knew she was right. Julian didn't laugh because I looked ridiculous. He laughed because I stopped fitting the version of me that made him feel superior. Near the end of packing, Tara suddenly froze. "What's that?" I turned toward the dining table. Julian's laptop was open. Instagram notification glowing across the screen. And there he was. Julian, standing beside Vanessa at some rooftop bar, smiling directly at the camera like they had been together forever. The caption read, "Funny how the right person brings peace into your life." I felt physically sick. I didn't even feel shocked anymore. I just felt empty, like my body had accepted the truth before my heart could. The post had gone up less than 30 minutes earlier. Less than 30 minutes after a 3-year relationship ended, he was already posting her publicly, after making me feel paranoid and dramatic and emotionally unstable for questioning him. Tara looked furious. He was absolutely cheating emotionally. I kept staring at the picture, and suddenly every confusing piece finally locked into place. Suddenly, all of it made sense. The criticism, the distance, the humiliation at the party, even the fight about the suit. He needed that fight. Needed me gone. Needed me framed as irrational before introducing Vanessa publicly. Because if he painted me as unstable first, then his new relationship would look justified instead of suspicious. It was never really about the suit. The suit was just the excuse. I remember laughing under my breath after that, which scared Tara a little. "What?" I spent weeks wondering if I overreacted. That was the cruelest part of all. Not even the cheating. The way he slowly made me distrust my own instincts. After a while, I stopped trusting my own reactions. I kept wondering if maybe I really was the difficult one. I left the apartment that night with the last box in my arms, and this strange mixture of grief and relief sitting side by side in my chest. My heart still hurt, but my mind finally felt clear. A month later, one of my coworkers invited me to her daughter's wedding. I almost didn't go because I was still exhausted emotionally, but Tara practically forced me out of the apartment. So I wore the suit, the same charcoal gray suit Julian laughed at. And that night, something almost funny happened. People loved it. Women complimented the tailoring. One guest asked where I bought it. Another told me I looked elegant. Elegant, simple, confident. Exactly how I wanted to feel that night in the first place. And standing there in a crowded room full of strangers, I realized something I wish I had understood much earlier. The right relationship shouldn't leave you constantly worrying about whether you're good enough. They don't slowly chip away at your confidence so they can feel bigger standing next to you. The right people don't make you feel stupid for loving them honestly. And they definitely don't laugh at the parts of you that showed up trying their hardest to be loved well. The suit still fits perfectly. But now when I wear it, I don't think about Julian anymore. I think about the woman who finally stopped apologizing for taking up space.